Today's show is brought to you by homebrewsupply.com. Homebrew Supply is your one-stop shop for brew day ingredients, recipes, equipment, and more. Take advantage of everyday low pricing and everyday flat rate shipping only at homebrewsupply.com. Go to homebrewsupply.com right now and use our promo code HHH to get 5% off your order. homebrewsupply.com. Let us help make your brew day better.
Entertaining shows with content that spreads information and sparks discourse throughout the community. This is the Pearl Media Network.
Cleaning brew systems, storing uncarbed kegs of beer, missing post-boil gravity, and a question about routine keg maintenance. This is Homebrew Happy Hour, episode 204. Hello and welcome to the Homebrew Happy Hour. This is the show where we supply the answers to your homebrewing questions and discuss all things related to craft beer. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on the submit a question link at the top of the page, or now you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. I am your host, Joshua Stubing. Today I am joined by the Director of Operations at cmbecker.com down there, Mr. James Carlson, as well as over there to my left, if you're looking stage left, the President and Chief Keg Washer of kegconnection.com, Mr. Todd Burns. Gentlemen, how are y'all doing today?
Oh, good. I can't get my microphone to stop going down. Can we get me some better equipment?
I can see that.
It's your checkbook. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, whatever.
Damn it.
I have a
I
wish.
guess I'm going to do it like this show.
You're like a game show host. Hey there, Todd Burns here, and pull on door number one. How are you? While you're fixing that, I was going to say I'm going to mute him, but I can't. We're in a Zoom meeting. I can't. Oh, no, pardon me. I can mute his individual channel. Ha ha! Now we don't hear you. Anyway, James, how are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. It's a little warmer today, but it's still kind of cold.
It is, and I know, and I'm wearing the beanie because in Texas, anytime it gets below 55, I put a beanie on because it's cold. Oh, hold on, Todd. I can unmute you now. I'm asking you to unmute. You have to unmute yourself. I don't know how to work Zoom. We've only been doing this for an entire year.
Okay, I'm not going to touch the microphone. I'm just going to leave it like it is.
Just stay still, like Jurassic Park. Don't move.
That's right.
We're having our 1 week of winter, I think, this week right now. So trying to enjoy it while we can. It was 38 when I woke up this morning. That's cold. And last week,
it's been cold the last few days.
Yeah, and what was it last week this time? 90?
Yeah.
I can't stand this, man. It's madness.
Yeah. I know that it was one day I looked on the weather and there was going to be a 60-degree difference that day. That's incredible, really.
Yeah, because it wasn't nearly 90.
It was 90 and then
Sunday?
It was 30. I mean, it would just, a huge
crazy
swing.
It's nuts to me how cold it gets, how warm it gets, and it just bounces back and forth like nothing. Like our weather, it's just like, you see so many memes or illustrations on Facebook, and it's usually the older people sharing them, but they're true, where it's just like, I saw one that said like, Texas weather is putting out numbers like it's playing Powerball. It was showing like 44, 87, and that's in a day. It has been crazy weather lately, but I will say this.
I love the cold weather, though.
I do
it's
too.
Nice to have it back.
It makes me want to sit in bed, eat a bunch of carbs, and then brew beer. It's great brewing weather. Sitting outside, or especially if you brew outside. Like my dad and I, when we were doing the cooler brewing system, brewing outside is much more enjoyable when you're not sweating, all your water weight off of you. I was going to say something more derogatory.
James and I have no idea. We don't brew outside ever, so
must be nice. We were just talking. We've lost a couple of great, Texas artists in the last week, right? So we lost Jerry Jeff Walker, who's technically born in New York, but we call him a Texan, and then we lost Billy Joe Shaver yesterday. So some of my favorite all-time songs, right? I know, and we are so in Texas. This coming weekend is opening weekend for deer. Oh, pardon me. A week from this weekend. I forget what weekend we're going into. November the 7th is opening day. That Saturday. I don't know.
Is that the 7th? Is that the
7th, James?
Saturday? Yeah. 7th. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah, you have the calendar. I wish I had technology
Yeah,
at
it's
my
a Saturday.
Yeah, Saturday. So Todd's buddies are having this big thing for opening weekend. Like I said, just y'all do every opening weekend. Where
Yep.
Y'all hunt together. Fortunately, you and your buddies are kind of in the same area. And so I got invited finally. I feel like a man. But the caveat is I'm not actually invited. I'm the jester. I'm the entertainment.
He's gonna play the guitar and
lead.
We're gonna. It'll be fun. We've been kind of practicing some songs.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I just last night picked up. So Todd got this Ultimate Guitar. Isn't that the name of the software?
Yeah.
To where it just as a database of all these chords or tabs or whatever. And so we're making a list of all these songs to learn. And Mr. Bojangles just learned it. So we're gonna. I think it's gonna be fun. Like I said, I'm not hunting this year, but maybe in the future I'll start hunting.
Why aren't you?
I've just never hunted.
So right now is the perfect time.
This is this grocery store. It's called H-E-B. It's great. You go to the counter and they have, and the meat is all right there, and you just pick which one you want. I mean, they even have different like lean cuts.
You got to pay for that though, right?
You do. Don't even try to tell me hunting's cheap. Yeah, see, James is laughing.
The cleaning bill, the butcher bill.
Well, I do it myself. So.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, but your licensing, your ammo, you're keeping sighting in your rifle, keeping all that stuff fit and ready to go. And if you value your time, you're not saving any money. But it is a great skill. I mean, I could.
Are we talking about homebrewing or hunting? I forgot.
We're talking about both.
What's the difference, right?
Oh my gosh, we're definitely talking about both. Since that is funny. I will say this before I get the real small talk out of the way and we go into the questions. I do chuckle every time someone messages us and says like, I've loved craft beer the last decade and I want to save some money. So I'm thinking about getting into home brewing. And we welcome them in, but I chuckle a little because it's like, you're probably not going to save money, especially if you get bit by the bug and then you start getting the nice equipment. You upgrade to the conical fermenter and you're brewing in 15-gallon batches and you look at what ingredients cost any given time of the year, or you definitely have to love the hobby to continue doing it, right? Like if we didn't love brewing, we wouldn't be brewing and we wouldn't be doing what we do.
Yeah. I mean, you definitely save money, but not if you probably include your time.
Well, that's what I mean.
But how can you ever do that with any hobby?
Exactly. No, you can't. I mean, you're doing it for fun. You ought to be paying somebody else to homebrew. It's so much fun, right? So.
Yeah.
Well, James, that is a good point, though. You're right. I can't think of any hobby that I've ever taken part of where I had the intent of saving money or I actually ended up saving money from whatever it was, like,
sure. Yeah.
I have an office full of very expensive musical gear and production stuff, and there's a lot of people who produce records way better than me. I should just buy their albums.
Yeah, but now that we're getting the band together, that may change. We might make some money now.
Oh
right?
no, yeah. When we do let me segue us into our real small talk after all the other people have already dropped off this show. They're like, this is garbage. We are still doing on Tuesday night the election. Todd and I, live from the barn, are going to be covering election results with you, Patreon members. I've sent a link out to the YouTube, and if you're already part of the private special Facebook group, you'll get that link as well to come join us, where we will be doing a inebriated cast. I don't want to say drunk cast because it's a weeknight. I don't think we're getting drunk. But we will definitely be enjoying ourselves. And we'll probably be playing some of the music. That would be a great time to practice. If you want to come see how the band is progressing, starting on Tuesday night, November the 3rd.
We just lost everybody now.
Yeah, you're right. They're like, this is going to be garbage. Yeah, our real, this has been a long time coming. We've been talking about doing the band for 5 years, and we've been using this podcast as a warm lead into it. And now every show from here on out is just the band stuff. But we are going to be
we're getting the band back together.
Getting the band back together. James, I know you play guitar. I know you do.
Oh yeah,
no.
Yeah. We got to get James in the band. Man.
I build them. I wouldn't say I play them.
But you do. I know you do. We will. we're gonna have a fun time on Tuesday night, and if you're in our Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour to get all the info. Just a very, very transparent disclaimer: we are not going to be politically lecturing you. We are not going to be emotionally invested in anything that might be happening that night. We're gonna have a good time. Todd has a great sense of humor about things, and I don't take.
Y'all both
Yeah,
do.
we will probably offend people on both sides. We're equal offenders. We will offend people on both sides.
The more
right?
we drink, especially, that will be true.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it. This should be fun just because of how it's wrestling to me, right? I grew up watching WWF, and politics is WWF or whatever it's called now, WWE. It's the new and improved version of it. So I'm looking forward to having a good night. So yes, you can go to our patreon.com/homebrew happy hour for more info. Also from our Patreon, last call for the October recipe kit, which is the new and improved Dusseldorf Alt beer from Horst Dornbusch himself. We're sending it out to all $50 tier members, obviously. But also, we made a deal that any $35 member can also get in on this fantastic recipe kit. So, again, go to patreon.com/homebrew happy hour. Sign up. You still have a couple more days if you want to get that kit included in your recipe kit receiving tier.
Hey, and I've got an update on that, too. I've got it back here in my fermenter, and I've been carefully testing it every couple of days to see how clear it is, and it tastes fantastic. And we didn't even use the latest greatest ingredients on the one that we brewed. We've got that the new grain that we're going to include with the Patreon members, right? So
it is, yeah. And James was very adamant about making sure that that's what they received. It's that bark.
Bark pills.
The bark pills. Thank you.
And they actually. I found out they make bark Munich malt too.
Really? So the whole recipe we send out to Patreon members, and I believe, Mr. Burns, what is going out to anyone who orders it on the websites now is the new Horst recipe, right, guys? I mean, that's what got. I think that's what's.
That is
right.
correct.
Yeah.
That is absolutely correct. Yeah.
I'm excited to try it. Again, I've been doing sober October, and I was thinking, my birthday is that Monday. And it's a Monday and we're not doing anything besides my wife and I are going to, do a dinner thing or whatever. I wasn't going to drink that night. I was thinking about waiting till November 3rd to go ahead and drink and then just really reacquaint my liver to the deliciousness of that alt beer. And then cigars too, I've been abstaining from.
Yeah. I don't know if the alt beer won't be kegged yet. So, well, I'm going to save it until opening day or the opening weekend, so you can have it a few days later. I'm going to let it clarify up till maybe like Friday.
I was wondering what we were going to be doing for opening weekend beer because I saw an email from the guy who's organizing it saying, and Todd brewed some awesome beers. And I was thinking, that son of a gun, he's giving my keg of melt stout to the group, isn't he? Aren't you?
So my plan right now, I don't know that we'll take the alt or not. Maybe the alt and the Kolsch, maybe, but I've also got that other beer that I brewed specifically for opening weekend, which is the clone of
Yingling.
Yingling clone, which, man, that's good. I've been drinking
really good. I've been drinking it too because I have the milk stout, and of course the James Brown Lager is gone.
Oh.
The Smash Pills is gone.
So you don't feel good anymore?
You know what? That James Brown Lager really grew on me. I got to where I was really liking that.
I liked it a lot too.
Good.
Yeah, Todd, we got the joke. That melt stout.
I sing that song every time I pour one. Every time I pour one.
I cannot get enough of that melt stout. That is legitimately, that's what I'm looking forward to the most of drinking again in November and being up there next week is because that melt stout is so good. And my dad and I, technically I could start drinking Sunday and we go to my parents. And my dad has that Guinness clone. So maybe I'll break it. Maybe I'll actually officially start drinking again on November 1st. I didn't actually quit drinking until October 4th. So or was it October 3rd? It was a few days in because a lot of people called me out. They're like, is it sober October or sober whenever you wanna? And I was like, hey, why don't you mind your own business? But anyway, and then real quick, last thing, update, Todd, we had let people know why you were out last week, and we are keeping them up to date a little. Your pop, he's back at home and healing, correct?
Yeah. He actually is feeling really well. He looks really, really good. We've been taking dinner over every night and getting wood because he loves to have a fire. And He is forbidden from leaving the house, which is extremely hard for somebody that likes to work about 12 hours a day outside. So anyway, he's doing really well. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, cool. Okay, because a lot of people were concerned, especially in our Patreon group. I had put out just a little blurb about it, and a lot of thoughts and prayers went his way. And everyone who had sent good wishes and all that, we really appreciate you guys because, like I said, Todd, he's okay. I really hang around because his wife and his dad are cool, but you're okay too, Todd. I mean, you get it though. It's not the first time I've told you that.
No. I'd prefer them as well over me. So.
Yeah, you're on the same page. So anyway, that is all the small talk. Again, you can always get more information about what we're doing at patreon.com/homebrew happy hour, or just go to our website at homebrewhappyhour.com. We've got 4 questions for y'all this week, and starting with the first one came from our buddy Corey, who used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Corey wrote, "Hey, Homebrew Happy Hour team. So I took your advice and moved up to larger batch sizes. Instead of a measly 5 gallons per brew day, I can now brew 10-gallon batches on my new gear while also brewing a 5-gallon batch on my old gear. Huge win. 15 gallons of beer in roughly the same amount of time it took me to brew 5 gallons in the past. One big problem though, how the hell do I clean a 15-gallon kettle and fermenter? They wouldn't fit in my kitchen sink, so I laid them on the counter and used a little kitchen sprayer to hose them down. Unfortunately, I ended up with more water on the floor, counter, and walls than in the sink, and my pants got so wet that it looked like I pissed myself. Been there, done that. Next, I tried the bathtub. But
but you actually pissed
But I actually pissed myself. Yeah. Next, I tried the bathtub, but in the stainless kettle, the stainless kettle left lots of black smudge marks all over, and I'm really concerned dropping the kettle from even a couple inches will crack the tub. My wife loves my beer, but if I break the tub, I think my brewing days are over. There has got to be a better way. How do you guys clean your larger kettles and fermenters? I'm considering running hot water to an outdoor hose, but would love to hear other ideas. I really enjoy the show and especially the banter. The Homebrew Happy Hour podcast always leaves me in a good mood, and if the opportunity ever arises, the first round is on me. Cheers from Carnation, Washington, Corey. Corey, thank you so much. I'll kick it off. I believe all of us do our cleaning on the outside. Todd and James are both fortunate that they pre-planned. The brew room James uses there at the office has a drain on the floor. And so if you had to do cleaning and stuff, boom, it's right there. That was because of prior preparation. That was from mistakes learned. Proper preparation. Something I'm not good with, but Todd too has that in his home. But still, when I'm up there at the barn, Todd, we do everything pretty much on your patio inside of it because that's
I did exactly what he said. Yeah. I ran hot water hose. So I put in a hose bib with hot water going to it, and I've got hot and cold water right out there on the front porch, which the only problem is I tend to do the old soak thing, and sometimes they sit out there for a week and soak.
Like my dishes.
I get lazy.
Like the dishes at my house when I'm doing them. But no, babe, they're soaking. Well, at the office though, I was going to ask James, because you'll have the drain there, do you do most of the cleaning there in the brew room, or do y'all still take it outside?
No, I take it outside. I've got a Scotch-Brite, not a Scotch-Brite. It's what you use. You get at the grocery store, cleaning dishes. And I'll use our brew clean, go outside with a hose, clean it up that way, rinse it out real good, dump it, and then let it set out and air dry, and then bring it back in. Just too big and heavy and bulky to try to clean it inside.
A lot of times too, I think you do this too, James. If before I had the hose outside, which is a recent addition, I would just take a 5-gallon bucket, fill it full of brew clean, and then mix that with some really hot water inside, and then take the bucket outside, dump it in the fermenter. Maybe do that twice and then fill the rest of it with cold water. And it worked. That works really well too. So,
yeah. And if you can get another thing you can do is what's called CIP, clean in place. I'm not a big fan of it because it's hard to get everything really clean the way I like to get them clean. But it is technically you could do that if you can get all the solids out, and then you can just turn your pumps on and have it recirculate through each system. That works too. A lot of people do it. I just prefer not to.
And this leads me to I just had a thought in my head, because you had a brew day there at Teddy's one time, like the maiden voyage brew day, right?
Yeah, very inaugural brew.
And how did cleaning go on a small commercial? Because cleaning the 20-gallon kettles they all have, look, like I know my whole shtick is, oh, he whines a lot and this and that. I whine a lot on cleaning. Todd will let you know. Like, it's just so monotonous it can be. On those big systems where you have to use clean in place, is it easier because it is just hooking up stuff and pumps, or is it?
I don't know if I would say it was easier. It's different because of the fact that they have the industrial pumps and a lot more pressure, and then they have auxiliary water hose with a spray head on it. The first thing we did was we pulled, if you can imagine, nearly 800 pounds of saturated grain out of the mash tun after the brew day was up. We started boiling, and then we pulled that out of the mash tun, and that was a combination mash lauter tun. And we had one of those big construction grade hoppers with wheels. We completely filled it up. In fact, I thought it was going to break the wheels it took 3 of us to push it outside, and then he used a dump truck to dump it into a dump bed. And then we just took a water hose and a couple of deck brushes and scrubbed the particulates off the walls and the floor, because we had to pull the false bottom out of that and then get every nook and cranny. And then just kept scrubbing and washing and scrubbing. And it
Okay, that sounds terrible. Never mind.
Yeah, it was not fun.
Yeah, you're like, it made you rethink about commercial brewing. You know, well, and we always do.
Absolutely.
And we do joke though at home brewers, not just us. All home brewers joke about mainly being a janitor more than anything. You're a custodian 90% of the time, and you're a chef 10% of the time, and then you're a schmuck 10% of the time, or maybe that's just my chart. But it was cleaning is definitely my least favorite part of the brew day, but it is what I'll tell Corey that the 3 of us benefit from is basically having a routine and a spot for the cleaning. Like Todd's front porch is set up in a way when it's brew day, like because of how easy it is to drag his hot water line and all that over there to get the cleaning done in a quick amount of time before stuff starts caking on it and just, becomes even more difficult to get off. My pop and he has a little side. It was on my basketball court growing up as a kid, and now it's just a concrete slab on the side of the house, and we use that for cleaning. It's nice to have a designated spot for cleaning if you can muster that into your setup, because sure. It'll make it just that much more. I think having a flow for every brew day just makes it go smoother. Like, this is what I do. I get this stuff. I get my water ready, right? Like I'm walking through a brew day of Todd. Todd's always got to collect the water. And then the next step is, getting the temperatures up to then start doing the mash. And while all that's going on, then you might be, sanitizing a fermenting bucket if you're using that or whatever. And then during the cool down is when we're going to start cleaning some of the stuff, because, you want to get to it soon. And I guess where I'm getting with it is, would y'all agree that routine, regardless of how you're cleaning, getting into a routine is appropriate?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sorry. You were going on so long. I stopped listening. What were you saying?
Everybody stop listening. I don't want to talk.
No, absolutely. I think the key is to figuring out how's the best way to clean your system and your environment, and then just stick with that.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
And Corey did talk about, I'd love to hear. He's talking about running a hot water to an outdoor hose bib, but would love to hear other ideas. I think that might be your best bet, dude. I don't know of a better way, unless you were a commercial operation with a cleaning room specific or whatever. But for us home brewers, I mean, getting it out of the hose or getting hot water from the hose to cleaning it is what's key. And if you don't want to make a mess indoors, which none of us do it outdoors. And I think that that's your best bet. I think that about wraps up his question, right? I don't think you had anything to add. I know Todd loves cleaning, but there's not a whole lot more we can add to that, except to reiterate to what James was saying. Brew Clean, phenomenal for getting off.
Yeah, it's a great product.
It's a great product, especially if you accidentally let something soak for way too long in just water, and then it starts taking on there. I have not seen an issue or gunk on a wort chiller or on a kettle or whatever that didn't come off after soaking in a hot Brew Clean bath for
Oh yeah, that's just great. I use it for everything, not just brewing, because I use it all the time. It's my favorite cleaner now, so by far.
Me too. And I had people on a Reddit. It was either Reddit. No, it was a Kegerator Facebook group. And they were talking about, oh, I moved off of PBW and went only to OxyClean. And it's great. And it's great. And I've never used OxyClean. I'm sure it's good, but it's expensive. OxyClean is not cheap. And so I was like, try Brew Clean. We've had good experience, and we've literally been using it for a decade. I think that's when Todd, isn't that when you commissioned it? Was about a decade ago?
Don't start me lying, but yeah, just about. I would say it's been about a decade ago.
I think it's been right about 10 years, and same formula. That might be boring, but it's been working good for us. But anyway, now I'm just ranting on about stuff. So moving on. Or first off, thank you, Corey, for submitting the question. This is a great time to remind you all, when we take your question on a future episode, we do send you a $25 gift card to keggconnection.com, courtesy of Mr. Burns. Thank you, sir, for your generosity. Moving on to question number 2, came from our buddy Josh B, who used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. I like this one. Josh wrote, "Hey guys, my name is Josh, pronounced," and then he actually put the pronunciation out there. Pronounced Josh, since Joshua has trouble pronouncing names. Josh, I have a speech impediment. It's not that I can't pronounce names. I have an impediment. It's inherent to me, and that's just rude. He says, I just built a kegerator thanks to the great deals over at keggconnection.com. My keezer will only hold 2 kegs at a time. So I was wondering, if I bought 2 extra kegs and filled them with beer, then purged it with CO2, but didn't carbonate it, how long would it stay good outside of the keezer? I would like to have a couple kegs ready to go for when one runs out. And my second question is, if I force carb through the liquid side, do I need to agitate the keg, or will the CO2 coming from the bottom of the keg be enough agitation? Thanks, fellas. Josh B. Those are 2 great questions. Let's start with the first one. I've never stored or aged beer in a keg at room or ambient temperature. Todd, is that a thing, or is he looking for trouble by doing that?
Well, it's not pasteurized, so really, you're not supposed to leave it at room temperature for a long period of time. I mean, people leave beer in the secondary a lot of times for 3-4 weeks. So, you could leave it out a while, but you'd want to at least keep it cool. I wouldn't put it somewhere hot like the garage. I'd put it in the coolest place you can find, and just keep in mind that at some point you're going to have issues. You're going to start to get off taste. The best thing you could possibly do is to find some sort of a fridge that you could put it in. I put mine. I've got a beer fridge, but you could use, if you've got a fridge in your garage that, your second fridge, you could just take the shelves out and put it in there. Anything would be better than just leaving it in a warm environment.
And James, the part about him not carbonating it, what difference would carbonation make between if you're storing it in outside of a keg? Like, is that going to matter if it's carbonated or not?
To me, it wouldn't. But the one thing I would caution is heat destroys beer or it makes the shelf life go down. So temperature is everything, whether it's carved or not. And the warmer it is, the less the shorter the shelf life will be for that, and the flavor window will be a lot smaller. So Todd's right. Find an old keg keezer, put a temperature controller on it. You can find those if you look around for less than $100, and that'll store plenty.
Yeah, and I would definitely carbonate it at least some, because you want to make sure you got all the air out of there, all the oxygen out of there, or you're going to oxygenate the beer. So, at least partially carbonate it and vent it real good, and make sure that, you want to have CO2 coming out of the beer and driving any air, oxygen that you've got in the keg out.
Yep. That's going to make it keep better too. Cause we've all talked about the lemon drop pills that we had shipped, and it's set in a hot warehouse just a couple of days. And there was enough of bad bugs in that one keg for it to propagate and cause it just destroyed the flavor of that beer.
Oh yeah, at the homebrew con, we ended up not serving that one, right?
Had to dump it.
Well, we did serve it. That I won't ever forget. Our friend Michael Ferguson, friend of the show, he's been on a few times. I'll never forget his face, because him and a buddy, and I forget the buddy's name, sorry buddy, who came to the booth because they were all access because they were speakers, so they got to come to the ground to the trade show floor before general public got to. And he came over to our booth, and because he'd been drinking our beer that whole week, and he was like, "Oh, let me share with you their beer. And then I poured it for him. And he tasted it. Goes, you may want to try that. And I freaked out because I was like, oh no, I poured him a bad beer. What did I do? And yeah, it like James said, all it did was it sat in a hot warehouse for a few days, and that's all it took for that one keg. Fortunately, that was the only keg of the whole lot that went bad. But temperature, when your keg goes hot, it brings out the worst of it, or it can it can.
Yep.
Doesn't always, because like I said, those other beers sat in a hot thing too. And we remember how we packaged those beers as insulated as we could, and trash bags and cold packs all around. It doesn't matter, man. When it's the middle of the summer, it's the middle of the summer, and it obviously it got warm quick. So we're lucky that our beer just tasted good at all, any of that beer, because that would have been the most heartbreaking if other beers had gotten ruined. But his second question from Josh's question, if I force carb through the liquid side, do I still need to agitate the keg? Y'all both force carb through the liquid side, don't you? Or Todd, do you on your rig there? Do you force carb? I know you rock it.
It does. I mean, it doesn't matter at all
Okay.
which way I do it, because I rock it. So both dip tubes are under beer. So I normally just force carbonate on the gas side, but that's just because I put it on its side. The beer's already cold. I rock it for a couple of minutes and then taste it, and then maybe another minute or 30 seconds taste it until I get until it's almost carbonated enough. Then I stop, put it in the kegerator, then I put gas on the, I still have it on the gas side. But if you're using a carbonating stone, obviously, then you would do it on the liquid side. Or James, how do you do it?
I'll because we have that set up here in our brew room. I carbonate on the liquid side, and then I put it in my lap and rock it. But you should be able to leave it upright and then just pull the pressure tab and let it go through the liquid. I used to do it that way with the big kegs, the big Sankey kegs, because my back couldn't handle rocking a 16-gallon keg. So I would do it, stand it up, have it go through the liquid side on the coupler. And then I would just pull the pressure tab on the side of the coupler and let the CO2 flow through the beer. And you can hear it dissolve into the beer when you let off the pressure valve. You can hear it dissolving into the beer as bubbles. And when it quits bubbling, let it set for a little while and then pull it again, and you'll hear that once again. I did that a lot with the big Sankey kegs, and it seemed to work too.
I think a key thing to point out too, because I get this question a lot from a consumer side as well as Homebrew Happy Hour listeners, rocking the keg is not oxidizing the beer because the oxygen has been purged out by that point from the CO2. Because people will ask, they'll go, wait a second, rocking, I'm not like sloshing it. Like, well, no, you're not sloshing it. But even some people think, because various kegs that you
are sloshing it.
Yeah, okay. But you're not shaking it. Like would you recommend that they pick it up like Hulk and start shaking it? Of course not.
It wouldn't hurt anything.
Okay, you're right. You're
as
right.
long as you put all the oxygen out, it doesn't really matter how you agitate it. It's just agitating.
You're right.
It's going to make it carbonate much, much faster because you're kind of going back and forth and folding. It's amazing when you're rocking it. If you stop rocking it, it'll stop putting pressure in within a few seconds. As soon as you rock it again, you can hear it going again. So. Yeah. But I think you should do it like the Incredible Hulk next time, Josh. We can see a video of that, because James and I would have to have back surgery.
Are we kegging any beer while I'm up there next week? Because I'm there the whole week.
Yes,
okay,
we are.
We're gonna do a video. Here we go.
Oh.
I'm gonna pick it up.
There you go.
Oh, it's gonna be terrible. Cause I am weak and frail and falling apart. But it'll be worth it. It'll be worth it. It was a great question too, just because when my dad and we started doing forced carb on the liquid side, just because it seemed to get better results for us, but we also still rock it. So it's good to know that that's just enabling it even more, or helping it even more by doing it. But like you said, James, it's not necessary. If you're doing on the liquid side, especially, both dip tubes are already submerged, and you can get adequate carbonation levels from doing it on the liquid side alone.
And another thing I'll point out too is, even if you don't pull the pressure tab and you have it setting upright, like Todd said, if you if you just lift it with it sitting, if you just rock it like that, you can hear the gas start to dissolve into the liquid. But at the minute you stop, it'll do it a few more seconds and then it'll slowly go away. So it's amazing what that will do. You can really make carbonation go quicker if you shake it.
Yeah, you could just put it in the kegerator and hook it up and put it at whatever pressure you want eventually, and it would get there eventually, but it might take quite a while. It might take a week or something. So
right, and there's charts online that tells you volumes of CO2 versus temperature and time. So if you want to set it and forget it, and you're not like me, I want to drink it immediately after I keg it. I don't have the patience for that.
I was just about to say, our friends at Brewer's Friend have a calculator for that. They have a calculator for everything.
They do.
They saved me and my dad's brew day. Thank you, Brewer's Friend. I was going to also mention, too, a couple of quick points. If you're brewing or if you're using pinlock kegs, you can't make this mistake because the distillants only go on one post. If you're using ball lock kegs and you're going to carbonate on the liquid side, use a liquid distillant to go on that liquid post, or you might have a bad time. It depends. Sometimes they get difficult to pull off, especially if you have those Chinese imitation ones. Those are that I get. James, how many calls or emails do you get from people like, I think I'm gonna have to break this post because they put a gas disconnect on the liquid side doing forced carbonation and it physically won't come off. And they're like, what do you do? What do you do? And you're like, well, first off, I don't sell those. I sell the
yeah, exactly.
But secondly, you know, that's why I love having threaded lines. Is because I just switch over a CM Becker liquid distant onto our gas line, put it on the liquid side, and no problems. When we're done, bloop, it comes right off. But if I had a nickel,
just make sure you switch them back when you do that.
Yes, absolutely, yeah. But if I had a nickel for every person that I've either forwarded to you or had something come through about like, my distant stuck on the post, I'm like, you used the gas distant on the liquid side, didn't you? And they're like, how did you know? Because that happens all the time. But
it
anyway.
Does.
So thank you, Josh, for submitting that question. Moving on to question number 3, came from our buddy Dan, who also used the submission form at homebrewhappyhour.com. Dan wrote, hi, Josh. Sorry to hear about your dog. That is always a tough day. Just think about the good life you gave him. Thank you, Dan. Appreciate that. Todd, glad your dad is doing well after surgery. And James, handsome as always. This guy knows he knows how to get on the show. I have an Anvil Foundry 10.5 on a 220 circuit. I have used it twice now and hit my pre-boil gravity both times. My issue comes after I boil for an hour. I do not hit my post-boil gravity. I have the power at between 70% and 85%, and after the boil, my volume in both cases had gone down about half a gallon, if even that much, and my gravity only went up by 2 or 3 points. Do I need to boil more vigorously, longer, or just add DME at the end? Any thoughts on this would be great. Thanks, Dan. Yeah, the all-in-ones, man. Like that's where when I was saying earlier about Brewer's Friend calculator saving my dad and I's brew day, it's because of number woes. We were able to go in there and go, what do we need to do? And there, basically, the calculator said you need to add some volume, and here's the exact volume you need to add based off the numbers we gave it and the temperature and whatnot. In this specific situation, Mr. Carlson, what would you recommend to Dan?
Well, you know your system. So if your brewing software is calculating for a full gallon of loss and you only went down a half a gallon, then of course your gravity is going to be lower than what it should be. I know Todd and I both know the systems we brew on enough to know what loss we're going to get. And you can put that in, like in Brewer's Friend, you can calculate pre-boil and post-boil, and it'll help you calculate your water and your gravity readings better. Then that's normally what I do. So if your system's only losing a half a gallon an hour, then maybe you don't put as much liquid in it. I know that you want to top off your liquid pre-boil amount to post-boil. So if I'm not hitting gravity, I boil it longer. Just depends. It's a split off. It's a trade-off. Less beer, higher gravity. More beer, lower gravity, and that can also affect taste as well. But I'm more on the other side. If I'm wanting to hit 5% and I'm like at 4.5, but yet I have, 16 gallons of beer that I could probably pull into 3 full kegs. I probably do that versus trying to hit 5%. But that's me, and you may be different. But I would just look at the calculator and how you're figuring that, because you may want to add less water or boil it a little longer.
And y'all are no strangers to doing boil off. I want to say that Blonde Alt was a brew day where y'all did a little bit longer. Y'all had to boil down, right, for your numbers? Or was it, what beer was it that, it was when we were filming for the Anvil Brew Day. Oh, no, pardon me. It was the one where we messed up the spike system. That was it. With the what were y'all brewing that day? But you had to, y'all, just the numbers came into a way where you were like, oh, this wasn't planned, but here's what we can do. And y'all ended up doing a longer boil.
I think it was that dark wheat beer, wasn't it? The Schwartz beer?
Oh, maybe that's what it was. Or was it even your Czech lager? No, it might have been the Schwartz beer. You're right. I think you're right.
I think it was the Schwartz beer. So what we did was our numbers were way off. So we had to boil all the way down to almost 12 gallons to hit gravity. Still, I think what happened was, Todd, wasn't that the day that the controller, the temperature was way off, and we were mashing in the beta range versus the alpha range, so we didn't have near as much sugars as we would have if we would have mashed at a correct temperature. Is that right?
I don't recall that much exactly what happened. It was a while back. So.
It was.
Yeah. But it was a good.
I don't usually remember mistakes, So
we ended up boiling 3 gallons off to hit gravity.
Yeah, I remember we brewed for a long time.
I remember y'all having to boil off a bunch, but again, y'all's goal was to be able to hit your numbers and have the less quantity of beer but the higher gravity. Like you wanted that beer to be in style. You wanted it to be within that ABV range, and you didn't get 3 kegs worth, but you got 2 kegs worth. And at the time,
and it was actually a pretty darn good, tasty beer.
And you may have mentioned it already, James. But we didn't put the hops in till the last hour, right? Yeah,
because we knew that we were going to have to boil for gravity, because we were so far off on our numbers, and it was we split the difference. So when I say, do you want to hit gravity or do you want to have volume, we kind of compromised between the both on that day. Because we certainly didn't hit gravity, but we had enough volume and we were in enough range to where we felt comfortable with going ahead and yielding 12 gallons, I think is what we ended up with.
And my dad and I's issue was we had too vigorous of a boil. And so we had to add water at the end, which is, it worked out. That's how my dad would have preferred to do it anyway, because he wanted to make, he's like, oh, we get to bring it up to volume and that's going to give us our numbers. Hell yeah. Like basically,
cool.
Yeah, exactly. Basically give our numbers. But a couple parts of his question I want to put out there is, if he were to boil more vigorously on like a foundry, could that resolve his issue, because it would mean more boil off or more?
It would, absolutely would. You just want to be careful not to boil over.
Yes.
That's a real possibility when you're talking about boiling with an electric burner, because you just never know. It may look like a vigorous boil, and then all of a sudden a mushroom comes out of it and it starts coming out the top. But a slow, nice, easy rolling boil is what I look for. It's a trade-off for enough boil for DMS, and also not enough to lose a whole bunch of volume. But you got to remember that Anvil is skinny and tall. Yeah. So with our system, we have a big open mouth boil pot, and so we lose the moisture losses from the boil. I think is a little greater than if you had a skinny, tall column. It seems to be my experience in the past, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, see, for me and my dad on that spike, it was easy to let it get too vigorous because we had all that space. It's a 20-gallon kettle. We were doing a 10-gallon batch.
Sure.
And so we didn't mean to necessarily have it be so vigorous, but it was. And also, too, there was a fine line. We're still figuring out the system. And there was a fine line between, oh my God, that's so vigorous, and is it boiling? Is it boiling?
Right.
Like it kept going back and forth, and we didn't want to babysit it, so we just kind of let it do its thing. And like I said, fortunately, it was actually our friend Brian. He's a Patreon member. He was like, hey, just in case you don't realize this, you had such a vigorous boil, you should probably be able to add volume. Check out the calculator.
Sure.
So I pulled it out and I was like, oh my gosh, this is why I need to do every brew day live. So our Patreon community can correct me every time I mess up. And then just like, I check the comments more than I'm monitoring the beer. Like, what did he say? Oh crap, gotta do this. Or
it worked. Yeah, like we did that other time.
Yeah, just like you're right. It was when we had that boil over during our live 200th. I think it was an audience member who pointed it out in the chat, like, hey, you're having a boil over. And then I pretended like I noticed. It was like, oh guys, look, I see a boil over.
That was
pretty funny. We were all brewing together next to the pot, and somebody on the video notices we're boiling over. None of us do.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Hey guys, y'all might want to turn around. It's boiling over.
That's the beauty of live streaming. I'm telling you, we got to do every brew day live. And then before we wrap up his question, this is also a great reason and more evidence to prove James correct that it's always nice to have DME around. It's always nice to have, because like you said, if you want to add some more ABV to it, you can always add some DME at the end and then you'll be good to go, right?
Yep. You never know. Something could happen. Like that day that we were brewing that Schwartz beer. Todd and I both racked our brains trying to figure out why our gravity was off. Temperature is the only thing I can think of that day, but we could have had quite a bit more beer to drink. Not sure how the flavor profile would have been, but I think 15 is a lot better than 12.
Well, and I think that's why you boiled down those, because you were more worried about the flavor, if I remember correctly. But it did end up being delicious. I do remember that part of it. And like
it was really good beer.
And like Todd says, we try not to remember the mistakes if we can avoid it. But anyways, Dan, thank you so much for submitting your question. Moving on to our fourth and final question of this week's episode came from our buddy Steven. He's from Down Under. Love you, Steven. The show. Here's what he wrote. He goes, hey guys, love the show. I'm looking forward to the day you guys come to Australia to do a show from here, all in the name of work, of course. That's right.
Oh, that's a great idea.
All in the Todd, I'm telling you, we're huge down there. And by huge, we have tens of listeners. Tens of listeners. My question is in two parts and is about keg maintenance. I had an incident on the weekend where I found a beer puddle in my kegerator and discovered one of the O-rings on a keg beer post had a slight pit that was causing a leak. I replaced the O-ring and all is now good. The first part of the question is it necessary to strip kegs between uses and lubricate all the various seals and O-rings? I do this religiously and wonder if this has contributed to the early demise of this O-ring. The second part of the question is it advisable to change O-rings and seals at routine intervals? If so, what time or period or number of uses is advisable? Whilst I don't like wasting materials and doing unnecessary maintenance, I also don't want to risk losing my beloved beer for the sake of such a cheap part. Cheers, guys. Keep up the good work. Steven. I know someone who does routine keg maintenance religiously. I know someone who worships cleaning. And there he is right there. He's on the screen.
He's right there.
Steven also knew how to get his question on the show, because this is some subtle way of sucking up to Todd. It just feels like because James and I don't have anything to contribute to this.
No,
not anything meaningful. Not. Todd, what would you have to say to Steven? And by the way, Steven he's very active in our Patreon and he comments on our stuff. And I really would love to come down to Australia. I wanted to start the answer off with that. It would be fun.
Just dope me up on the flight, because
when they allow us in their country, aren't they totally locked down from foreign travel, or can people go into Australia now? I don't know.
I don't know.
I can't imagine how bad the flight would be, though.
Yeah. Well, I already get drugged up on flights. Are you kidding me? I don't mind flying. I remember the time we all went to Germany, and I don't remember if I pissed y'all off or not, but I slept like a baby, and neither one of y'all could sleep that whole trip. And we got
never been able to sleep on a
We got there, and flight. I'm like, oh, I feel so good. And y'all are like, shut up, get off the plane. We're leaving. We're getting off the plane. But y'all slept on the train. I do remember that. But anyways, back to Steven's question. Todd, it's a terrible thing when you find beer in your kegerator, especially from a leak, and that's why you clean it so much. Take his first part of the question. Can you do it too often?
I never disassemble my kegs and take all the dip tubes out and replace the O-rings. If I had just gotten a keg for the first time, and I could maybe see myself replacing the dip tube O-rings, but I never do. I mean, they're there. They don't touch. They're not touching anything. If they're working, they're working. And if you take them apart and pull them off and all that, they're probably going to stop working. I mean, they don't ever get any UV damage because they're in total darkness all the time.
Yeah.
They just the O-rings inside the dip tubes pretty much just last forever. I mean, they last a really long time. Now I have pulled dip tubes out where the O-ring was dry rotted, but the keg wasn't actually leaking at the time. So I don't normally take the post off and change out the dip tube O-rings very often. Now the post O-ring, I do change that out fairly frequently. If I get a keg that I haven't used before, I pop those off and put new ones on. They're extremely inexpensive, so that it's not the cost is negligible. The other thing I do is once I've got kegs in my system here and I'm using them, I have a whole bunch of kegs over here. I'm pointing over there, like y'all can all see them.
I actually can see them. They're all behind you.
So one of the things that I do is I will just take a little lube with my finger and I'll run it around that O-ring on the post, and then I put a little bit of lube on the O-ring for the lid every time I use the kegs. I always inspect the O-rings where I'm going to put the disconnects and make sure there aren't any cracks. I've only had that happen one time, and somebody else kegged the beer and gave it to me like that. And it ended up leaking a little bit, but I'm not going to mention any names.
Wait, I don't know who. I actually don't know if which one of us he's talking about. Oh no!
But anyway,
I think he's talking about me.
oh my gosh!
He gave me a keg one time that I didn't look at. It had a crack in the O-ring and it leaked out a little bit. So I kind of gave him a hard time about it.
Oh, did you? Huh? I've never been on the.
So
receiving
now,
end.
rest assured, when I keg beer, I make sure if the O-rings are even questionable, they get replaced.
I believe that.
I mean, those O-rings are so inexpensive. I pop them off fairly frequently and replace them, or just make sure they're greased. I mean, if I'm using it inside, it's in a kegerator most of the time. It's in the dark. I mean, that O-ring probably would last for years and years, but they're like 20 cents or something. I mean, yeah,
if that.
And you may have answered it in the middle of that. I started dozing off because you were just going on and on and on. And whatever you accused me of doing earlier. Is it introvally for you? Introvally? Do you do it at a like you do with your faucets? Because I get annoying text messages from you. James is on the receiving end of this too, where like every 2 to 2.5 weeks, cleaning out my lines in my faucet. Are you doing that?
Now that you mention that, have I cleaned those in the last 2 weeks?
It actually might be 2 weeks since you last.
I think
sent
it's
me
right at 2 weeks. I might need to do that this weekend.
I'll tell you if it was. You last sent me, let's see, scroll through here. You sent us a text. Oh, how funny is that? So Todd, it's been 2 weeks and 2 days.
Oh my God, I got to do it right now. Let's end the podcast so I get it going.
That's embarrassing. You let it go for 16 days. My dad, who listens to the show, Dad, write in and tell us how long it's been since we cleaned the lines. I think it's been 8 weeks since we cleaned the lines. It might have been 7 weeks. James, how long has it been since you've cleaned your lines?
I can't even answer that question.
But do you do the keg stuff as routinely as the because it's easier for the faucets because you're using them frequently. With kegs, like I'm picturing, is it just going to be kegs that you're going to use, or is it because we have between the three of us, we have a lot of kegs that at any time aren't in use? Is this something you would say like, yeah, you own 20 kegs, every intern amount of time here, you need to be looking at them? Or is it just like, hey, before you use it, here's what you do. Make a checklist. Check that the O-rings aren't cracked, re-lube the lid one, and test for pressure. Is that a good enough rule of thumb?
Sure. I know that one time when I first started kegging and homebrewing, I completely disassembled the keg and sanitized every piece with iodophor and then let them air dry, reassemble them. I would even have rubber gloves and put them all back together. And I did that over and over again. And when I started with working for Todd, he was like, you don't have to do that. That's a bunch of wasted effort. And he was right. And I haven't done it since. Now, if we have a new keg we bring in to circulation, I like to cut about a half an inch off the dip tube and then go through and make sure that the O-rings are all, especially the dip tube O-rings, because normally they don't get taken apart. So you want to replace that. Definitely on the post O-rings. Todd's right. Get a half a dozen of those, put them in a bag somewhere, stick them in your kitchen drawer, because you never know when they're gonna go out. I always put new ones on.
And Todd, for you, Mr. Clean, but you have more hair than me. But Mr. Clean, because that's what you do, is clean, not because you look like Mr. Clean. You're just doing that when you are pulling the kegs out to use, right? This isn't part of your like gotta clean it every 14 days.
No. Just if I'm going to use a keg, I inspect the O-rings, make sure there's not any cracks. I always lube them every time, regardless. The disconnects come on an awful lot easier if you lube them. That's all I do. There's not much to it.
Cleanliness, though, is important. I think we can agree on that. And so,
yeah, and sanitizing. So I always, when I fill the keg full of sanitizer, then I press both of the dip tubes, the poppet valves, so that sanitizer goes up into the dip tube, and then I drain it. And I make sure that I press them again to get the sanitizer out, and that's it. That's all I do.
Yeah, for me and my dad, with every keg when we're about to use it, because again, we have more kegs in storage, or just as many kegs in storage as we do in use. When we pull a keg to use, obviously rinse it first, clean it, sanitize it, and then pressure test it. Because that's the most heartbreaking thing to me, when you go through your brew day, went smooth, hit your numbers, fermentation went well, you kegged the beer, and then your keg is what causes an issue. Whether it's leaking liquid or whether it has a leak and introduces oxygen, and then you oxidize the beer or whatever, which I guess it's not possible for reverse, but Todd gave a gross look on his face when I even said that.
It was a inquisitive look.
No, it was a gross look. I was thinking hypotheticals. If you don't spot check the keg, at least what I'm saying is you can get yourself into trouble, or you could ruin a good batch of beer, or lose. Ruin might be the wrong word. You could lose a good batch of beer if your keg isn't adequate and up to holding it. But again, it's very quick and easy to do. Like, have y'all ever had a catastrophic keg failure in your teaser or your kegerator that you thought, oh, I checked it and here's what I missed, I didn't check? I can't think of. Oh, you have?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so was it because you didn't actually check the keg, or something failed while it was in use?
It was an O-ring. It was a failed O-ring, and it was the time I had the Schlussel, I transferred into a little 2.5 gallon.
I remember that.
I don't know about this at all. What?
Yeah,
I moved it
over. I transferred it over into a 2.5 gallon mini keg, and put it on gas and stuck it in my kegerator. And that next morning I smelt beer, and I ran in there real fast. And half the keg was gone.
I didn't. How did I not hear? Were you probably were mourning, and that's why I never heard that story.
I was very upset.
Yeah, of course
it was like the opening scene of a tale of two cities. He was down in his kegerator sucking Schlussel out of the bottom of it. So.
Oh man, it's 4:30.
I would have.
4:30 in the morning. No. Oh, I would have cried a big single tear.
Good. Yeah. So luckily, I had another one.
Yeah.
So I had two. And the other one, I didn't do that. I just kept, like Todd did, I kept it cold in my fridge, and
powered through it one day.
My 50th birthday, Wayne Kubiak came by.
Yeah, powered through it.
And I said, you know what? I've been looking for a reason. So we opened it up, and we drank that whole thing that night.
Yeah, that was a highlight of HomebrewCon for me. Was finally getting to tap in, because when y'all tried to bring me Schlussel back, the freaking government stole my Schlussel.
We not only had Schlussel, but we had Fuchsen too.
Fuchsen, Schlussel. You had some glassware, I think. You're like, oh, I got all this cool
the
stuff
glasses,
for you.
but they took the beer and dumped it out.
Yeah, of course they did. Gosh, thanks government. But anyway, now I'm just digressing more, guys. That's all I have for this week's show. Thank you to everyone who submitted your question. Again, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and then click on the submit a question link at the top of the page. You can also call them in or text them in to 325-305-6107. Gentlemen, I'm going to be there all next week. Basically, I'm coming up Tuesday. Todd and I are doing the election thing Tuesday night. I'll be there through Todd, you're going to have a lot of me next week, man. Are you going to be, and then apparently we're bunking together on opening.
We're bunking. We're bunking together.
We're
So is that opening weekend next weekend?
Yeah.
Yes.
And not the one. The one after this one that's coming up.
Right.
So, James, you really should come by and have dinner with us
You should.
that night and have some beer because he's catering it. And he's going to have more food than we could possibly eat.
You really should, dude.
Cool.
And
I got Emily with me, so I may have to bring her with me.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's a good idea.
Hey, she's got her learner's permit.
hey, there we go.
I'm not sure that it's child-friendly.
child-friendly.
Have you
atmosphere.
met Todd's friends?
Opening weekend, normally we don't have.
I was
That's sad.
I was told that your brother was going to Turkish oil wrestle me. That's all that's all I know
No.
about the weekend. I had to Google what it was. Now I'm on some safe browser list for my wife and having to explain things. But
Nothing about that sounds good at all.
but anyway, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys. Thank you for y'all's time this week. I'll catch y'all soon.
Thanks.
See ya.
And that will do it for this episode of the Homebrew Happy Hour. If you have a question you would like us to discuss on a future episode, you can go to homebrewhappyhour.com and click on that submit a question link at the top of the page. Or like I said, you can call or text them in by using 325-305-6107. Thank you to our show sponsor, homebrewsupply.com, for supporting us and the homebrewing community. Right now, last call on 15% off homebrew kegerator kits plus ball or pin lock kegs for only $30. Offer is available for a limited time. Like I said, last call is this weekend at homebrewsupply.com. On behalf of Todd Burns, James Carlson, and the Pearl Media Network, I'm Joshua Stubing. Thank you for listening.
This program is made possible by the checkbook of Mr. Todd Burns and by contributions to our newly launched Patreon by viewers like you. Visit patreon.com/homebrew happy hour and join our community. Thank you.